Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is the San Antonio Planning and Introductory Tour session. We are joined this morning by Executive Director Chelsea Buckholtz and Chairman Scott Kessner. My name is Christine Anderson. I am the Public Affairs and Communications Manager for the Texas Real Estate Commission and the Texas Appraiser Licensing and Certification Board. I have worked here at TREC for almost 10 years now, and before then I used to work for the Association of Realtors. We are so excited that you all took some time out of your day to join us. Some simple housekeeping measures for today's presentation. We're going to be doing a quick slideshow. You should see the screen right now. Throughout the presentation, our presenters will offer some time for question and answer. If you would like to just raise your hand, you can do so by hovering over the panel on your screen and raising your hand. We will call on you at an appropriate time for you to ask your question yourself. Or if you're not feeling like you'd like to talk on screen, you can also chat your question in the chat box. And I will make sure to read it and ask the questions of our presenters. So without further ado, I'm going to roll this over to our presenters for today. We do have a couple of important guests this morning here on the session, so I just wanted to introduce them as well. We have Commissioner Bob Leonard on the call. He is from San Antonio and is also a commissioner here at TREC. So thank you, Commissioner Leonard, for joining us today. We're lucky to have you. And I believe we have several staff members from the board on the call as well. I'm not sure if any of them would like to say hello or not. I believe Deborah Gordon is a staff member there at SABOR. So thank you guys as well for joining the call. Okay, without any other introductions needed, I'm going to go ahead and roll this over to Chelsea and Scott. Chelsea, if you would like to just introduce yourself, Scott as well, and then we can get started.
I think we'll start with Scott, and then he'll pass to me.
Sounds great.
You are
Scott,
muted,
yes,
Chairman.
You're on mute.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining in. And Vice Chair Leonard, thank you for joining in after yesterday's meeting. I think you'll find this very beneficial. We're going to run through this slideshow pretty quick. We want input from you, and if we don't have time for your question within the hour, if you want to chat it, then feel free to chat. We are taking, we're writing everything down so we know which direction you want TREC to go. I've been on the commission since March of 19. A lot of things have changed then. I think I know most of you live and breathe real estate every day. I broker 4 offices, about 124 agents, and I keep a fire extinguisher on my desk just like you do every day. So, we're here to find out what we can do to help you and what TREC can do. So I'm going to let Chelsea start. But like I say, feel free to throw us anything you have because we can't fix it if we don't know it. Chelsea?
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Chelsea Buckholtz. I'm happy to be with the San Antonio crew today. I wish it were in person, but I'm grateful that we have the opportunity to meet virtually. I'm happy to be in this role. I've been in this role since the beginning of January, and it's been anything but typical. Thanks to COVID-19, that's of course thrown our entire world for a loop. TREC continues to conduct business almost entirely remotely, and we have since the middle of March. So we have a few folks who come in to process the mail and the money that comes in the mail, and there are a few of us that come up on a semi-regular basis to check on things, but there are a lot of calendars in our agency that are stuck on March, which is a very, very interesting thing. I know that's true in your world as well. I'm very proud of how the agency has done in adjusting to this change in the way we do business. I hope you have seen that responsiveness in our agency. Our call wait times have gone down and remain around the 1 to 2 minute range, depending on the day, depending on where we are in the month and where we are in the renewal cycle. One thing in particular to note, speaking of renewals, is that of course we extended renewal deadlines in March and in April and in May and in June, and all of those extensions expired at the end of July. And so our agency is working through quite a mountain of backlog, really, just to renew all of those individuals. The same is true with new applications, but I'm very proud of how our agency has done in that. And of course, you may have seen that in the midst of that mountain of paperwork, we had an issue with our mail, where we get mail twice a day here at the agency, and one morning's worth of mail, which we estimate to be about 70 pieces, was shredded. We have been collecting our mail in what looks like a shred bin, because we don't have people at the agency every day. And that shred company, though, while they were not supposed to come and shred what was in that bin, did so. We had staff go and dig through that company's pile of paperwork and did find some of the mail, but we estimate about 70 pieces of mail were lost. And of course, we don't know what that is. So we are doing all that we can to mitigate the great inconvenience that is going to be on some individuals who are very confident that they sent something to us, and they did, and then we promptly and very securely shredded it without processing it. So let me apologize on behalf of the entire agency for this issue, and commit that we would like to mitigate the hardship on those that are involved. And we're slowing the process of expiration so that folks have time to check to see if their checks have been cashed by the bank, to see whether or not documents have been processed by our office. But if you sent anything to us between about July 9th and July 20th, you may double check to see that we've processed what it is that you sent to us. Again, it affects a very small group of folks, but it greatly affects those that are affected. Back to just the actual extensions and the renewal process, we do have a great article on our website that helps folks navigate that issue. If you need help with that, go look on that. We are on the other side of those extensions, so we will be business as usual in terms of deadlines from here on out. I still consider myself fairly new in this role. I'm in my 8th month, I guess. I have become fairly seasoned quite quickly, at least in agency business. I have definitely been looking inward because of the lack of opportunity to get out and to meet folks. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about me. I am new to the world of real estate, but it is a world I am loving. I have dabbled in that world in my personal life, but this is the first job I've had in real estate. I came at the same time Chair Kessner came a year ago last March as the general counsel, and then in January became executive director. I have been in the political world a long time. I worked for Governor Perry for about 6 years, both as one of his lawyers and then as a policy advisor. I have, wandered the halls of the Capitol. I've begged for money, working for state agencies before this one. And I'm not new to this world. I'm a swift learner. In every job I've ever had, I've learned the subject matter on the job. So while I am new to real estate, I have a lot to learn in that regard, but I'm committed to doing that quickly. And in the meantime, we are surrounded folks on our commission and in this agency who have great expertise that I am relying on. Lastly, it's very important to me that we have a healthy relationship with our license holders and also with the associations that represent our license holders, just like SABOR. Our missions are similar, but they are not exactly the same. And so we may disagree on some fronts, but I never want that to get in the way of our relationship. It is very important to me that we remain candid with each other, transparent, very communicative, and relationship focused. And I want to be fair as the licensing and enforcement entity of the license that you hold. So I believe we're doing well in that regard right now, but it is my commitment to maintain those healthy relationships and to and to be open and transparent. The mission for today, Christine, you can switch to the next slide, is to share with you our initiatives and to really just navigate the road ahead together. So we want to hear from you. We will primarily be listening. You can switch to the next slide. Before we get going, I did want to just mention what our mission here at TREC is. There's a lot of words in that top paragraph, but I'm gonna give you the bottom line, and that is that we must balance the consumer protection with regulation that supports continued economic growth, and of course, as you know, an ever-changing marketplace, never more than today. So that is our mission. We have to balance the business end of things also with the consumer protection end of things through regulation. Today we'll do a lot of listening. I'm going to walk through a few of the kind of what we'll be doing, and then some questions that we want you to answer. We'll walk through those potential initiatives, and then I want to know, what do you like? What do you dislike? What have we missed? And of course, I want you to know that our ears are always open. Specific questions that we would love your help to answer, and you can do that just in the form when you raise your hand and when you have comments, and if you have answers to these questions, I'd greatly appreciate you offering it. But what do you think of this direction? What do you think of the ways that we're headed? What excites you, and what may have some opposition? That's important for us to know. And then I also want to know how TREC can support your work. We are here for you, and we want to be supportive. Also, it's important for us to know how we are acting as an impediment to your work. Are we acting as an impediment, and if so, how? And then what do you wish we knew that it seems that we might not know? I ask that of my staff sometimes, and they, some are befuddled and others have an immediate response. Oh, you need to know this. But if you have anything like that, please let us know. And then, have we asked the right questions? Please offer any information you have in that regard. Let's see. With that, I think I might pass it back to you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. We'll go over a couple of strategic initiatives that will require legislation. Okay, one thing that everybody's looking at is increased potential license portability, and one of the questions we're trying to answer now, and we just established a broker responsibility working group, is, do we allow experience to substitute for some education? Okay, and they've been charged with determining whether or not current requirements are the least restrictive, and does it means to regulate effectively. Currently, it takes 900 hours to be a broker's license. Is there a way to where some experience counts towards some of those hours? And at the same time, we do not want experience to exceed limits or education. And like I say, we're not making any decisions. Broker Responsibility Group has taken that, and they're looking at it to say, okay, if you've been licensed 20 years, should that count towards some of the education? Maybe some education in another state. Maybe that should count as some of the 900 hours. So that's what we're looking at. And again, anything like that would require legislative changes. Next slide, please. Is it possible to broaden the use of drones by agents, inspectors, and appraisers? Can we allow potential candidates to get their fingerprints prior to applying for a license to streamline their process? And then we need legislation possibly to allow the agency to respond to emergency or natural disasters, such as, the flooding, the fires, the COVID-19, anything like that hampers our agency and our licensees from getting renewals. So all those will take some legislation, okay? Along with maybe we need to add statutory language to clarify insurance requirements for inspectors. And I think if you watched the meeting yesterday, we have a new consumer notice that talks about, even though inspectors must maintain E&O insurance, there are some limitations that they can have to limit their liability. Do we need to eliminate or repeal the Inspector Recovery Fund? We've had an Inspector Recovery Fund for years, and it just sits there, okay? And then do we want to reduce the state's regulations on right-of-way agents, stuff like that, okay? Next slide, please. And Chelsea, is this yours or is this mine? Okay, yeah. This is mind-boggling to me, and I know if you've talked to me, you've heard this number before. How do we, and I'm going to say eliminate or limit the check processing? TREC still processes $250,000 worth of checks a month, which to me is just an incredible amount of checks. Now, February of 19, we mentioned this, or February of 20, we mentioned this at the Texas Realtors Conference, and there's a lot of people very upset that they still use the check, okay? So we will not eliminate it, but how can we move to more electronic payments? Increase automation, self-service by license holders. If you have renewed your license, or you're a broker and you've sponsored licenses, or terminated licenses, or designated someone as a supervisor, or undesignated somebody as a supervisor, all that is now done electronically, and it's extremely helpful. It works really well, but how else can we improve that? We sponsored an agent Saturday morning, and Saturday afternoon he had his license. So a lot of things are moving in the right direction. We need to keep moving that way. We need to decrease license processing times. That's something we look at every time staff meets. Chelsea goes over that with the licensing department and the education department. Now, as a broker or an applicant, you can get online and you can see where your application is in the process. We need to maintain a 1-minute average for hold times in the call center. Several months we have been under a minute. The end of July, we were probably over a minute just because of the magnitude of calls that came in. When we waived or extended the renewal date for March, April, May, June, and July, that theoretically made 11,000 licenses due July 31st. So instead of processing 3,000 a month, we were tasked with processing almost 11,000. We need to set additional metrics to measure how our performance is. We need to increase availability on data for emergency business models. We heard a lot about, internet purchasers and stuff like that business model. And when it was all said and done, it was between, about 4% of the business. And then we need simplified rules so the stakeholders can understand it. I think all of us remember a few years ago when we had the advertising rules, and it was really confusing. So we want to make things easy to understand. All right, Chelsea, I'll hand it back over to you.
Okay, here's the same slide again, just asking you questions. And this is the time for you to either answer one of these questions or raise any of your own concerns for us to document, take back, try to fix, or we will try to answer anything we can here in this. So what do you think of our direction? What do we need to add? What excites you? What will have opposition? How can we support what you do?
Just to remind everyone, you can raise your hand and ask a question. You can just take yourself right off of mute and ask a question, or you can chat it in the chat box. And I think, hey, Scott, while we're waiting for anyone that wants to have feedback, our first TREC Broker Responsibility Working Group meeting is this month. Is that correct?
I think it's the second one.
Is this month.
Yes. They met for the first time, and when we put this group together, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there was a single carryover from the last Broker Responsibility Working Group, maybe one. So it is a new group of people from all over the state. We have people from large boards, large offices, small offices. We have some commercial, we have some strictly residential. We've got a really good mix of brokers. We really do.
I just shared the link to the upcoming meeting in case anyone has any interest in that. It doesn't seem like we have any questions just yet. So if you guys want to go ahead and move on to the next section.
Okay.
I do have a question, please. Why is it that if people have been fingerprinted for another purpose, that fingerprinting can't count for licensing?
That is a great question. I'll have two answers. The short answer is bureaucracy. the longer answer is really just that there's great, and I won't do a very good job of this, I'll go ahead and say, but there's confidentiality around the use of fingerprints. And even though those fingerprints are collected by the same agencies and they are sent to the same law enforcement agencies, they're run for a specific purpose. And we have talked within our agency about proposing or kind of leading the charge on creating a central depository for those fingerprints. So any entity that needs information found on those fingerprints could utilize that information. But that is that's a monumental undertaking, and one that's of course way beyond the mission of our work, but would be miraculous if it ever came about. So we're basically at the mercy of a primarily federal system that our state law enforcement agencies works with, and we simply tap into that information to the extent that our statutes allow it. But I 100% agree with you that would be a brilliant piece of work if we could all get our fingerprints completed just once, and then that information could be shared, as needed. But great question.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands raised, so I think we're ready to move on to the next section.
I did want to just mention, the Broker Responsibility Working Group, of course, is meeting, and there are some questions for them to answer. And I think across license holders, there is a lot of differing opinions on this. We hear a lot, do not decrease education. We need more education. And then I'll tell you that we also receive encouragement and questions from state leadership, like the governor's office. We recently had a series of questions that we needed to answer for them around the amount of regulation that our agency provides, and is it the least amount of regulation that would be required in order to protect to ensure consumer protection. There's a great movement across the country for regulation to be as limited as possible, and for there to eliminate any barriers to entry into fields like this. Now, I'll tell you that those questions that came from the governor's office were sent to all licensing entities, not just ours. So they were not looking to TREC to say you need to do less, but they are examining licensing entities across the state and very much encouraging our agency and others to ensure that we are not over-regulating. So that's the tension we're in, with license holders saying, please don't reduce, people need more education, or don't make it any easier to get into the field. I think we all have examples of folks who maybe negative experience that would cause this kind of request for more education. But we can't just live within that world. We do have this tension on the other side.
And Chelsea, just a quick question. When does I know that the commission has approved an addition of contracts course. When does that go into effect? And is that in addition to the current requirements of 18 hours? I know we've had some questions about that.
You've probably heard chatter around that, or even more. And over the course of really the next 6 months, you'll hear a whole lot more as we start educating folks on what's coming down the pipeline. Starting in February, you have an additional requirement, CE requirement. We're not increasing the hours. The commission is not increasing the hours beyond your 18 hours of CE. But within those 18 hours, you will be required to take 3 hours of a contracts course. Not a specific contracts course, but one that is helpful to your work. So providers are applying and really filing paperwork with our office to notify us that they have a contracts course, so that will trigger us to give license holders credit when they take that class. But that is coming down the pipeline, and you'll hear much more about it over the next 6 months as we communicate that out to the field. But any questions you have on that, I'm happy to answer. And then, of course, you may be aware that the Broker Lawyer Committee has worked very hard over the last year on some changes to our forms. And those changes were the last commission meeting in May. A set of changes were approved for publication to receive public comments on them. We received a lot of comments on those. Those were taken back to the Broker Lawyer Committee, and they recommended that the forms that they previously sent to the commission be pulled back and a new set of forms be proposed for public comment. And those were approved for public comment yesterday. And so you will see in the next couple of days, probably, I'm not exactly sure of the timing of when that will be publicized, a new draft round for review by license holders. So we will, again, receive those public comments. Am I right on that, Scott? I suddenly had this, yes. Okay, I had this frozen moment where I said, is that right? Yeah. You'll have an opportunity for public comment that then will be considered by the Broker Lawyer Committee, and then again by the commission at the November meeting.
Okay. Chelsea, if I can, on that, we have a contract, LLC question I'll let you answer, but I want to follow up on that 3 hours of contracts. When the commission approved an additional 3 hours of contracts required, we were very careful not to make it a promulgated class like Legal 1, Legal 2, or broker responsibility. We really wanted to give the freedom to the local associations and the local providers to put something together that their license holders needed, such as in El Paso, less than probably 3% of our transactions involve a homeowners association, okay? That's probably just opposite of in San Antonio. In Corpus, they can put contracts together talking about the windstorm and the mandatory addendums for windstorm. So each association or provider can provide the 3 hours on what affects their market. At the same time, the licensing and education department has streamlined the renewal process. If you have a class that currently you're teaching for contracts, you can send it in and have it approved for this 3 hours without submitting the entire class. So I know Sabor has a school. Any contract class you're teaching, you can submit that for approval for this 3 hours. Okay. Will you, Bob also commented, the contracts that were proposed yesterday will be out for public comments. The last time we had them out, we had over, 200 pages of comments, something like that. And Broker Lawyer looked at every comment, so feel free to comment on that. All right, Chelsea, do you want to answer the question about the LLC licenses? We seem to have that come up a lot.
Sorry, just because the recording doesn't necessarily see the chat box, I'm going to go ahead and read it so that the people that are watching this. So please explain that business entity and LLC is authorized and licensed by TREC and operates with heavy guidelines. Lots of misinformation out here by brokers and agents that it is illegal and threats to report to TREC.
Okay. There are lots of pieces to the LLC question, so I'm going to answer what I think may be the issue, and if I'm wrong, then Michael, just speak up and we can talk through it. So I was previously general counsel. I'm really grateful not to be general counsel. I think I'm better in a role that's not lawyer-like, so I'll put my lawyer hat on for a moment, but it's a little bit dangerous for me to do so. I'm just giving you that caveat. So an LLC is a business entity, and what type of business entity created by a license holder is really, we don't speak to that. That's a legal issue for you to decide. But often a question comes up around whether or not an LLC can receive a commission. And the answer to that is only if it's licensed, only if the business entity is licensed. If it is not, then no, it cannot receive a commission. And that's even true if that's a conversation between a broker and a sales agent, a broker can't pay a sales agent directly to an LLC unless that LLC is licensed. I received a question about that just last week, and it's something that comes up a lot. And to be perfectly honest, our agency has wavered on that. For some window of time, our answer to that would previously be, you know, if it's just for tax purposes and if it's a business decision just between kind of an employee-employer, we don't get in the middle of that. But if you do a strict examination of our rules and the law, there's not room even for that type of exception. So you have to be licensed in order to receive a commission. Does that answer the LLC question? Michael,
hopefully Michael is, maybe he'll be able to answer us. Okay, I have another hand raised in the meantime. Nicole, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, I had another question in regards to the LLC. So can you set up the LLC and then kind of pay yourself like a salary, I guess, from the LLC? Or is that still kind of considered what you just discussed in terms of receiving a commission? I'm just not sure. I guess I'm still trying to learn the LLC because I'm thinking of setting one up myself. So I kind of wanted to know a little bit more about that and how to, I guess, get paid from it.
That's a good question. I don't know that I'm prepared to answer that. I think that's probably a question for you to hire legal counsel on. Yeah, I mean, it depends on what your position is, and whether or not you're paying yourself. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts. But if your LLC is not licensed, then you cannot receive a commission. So I think it just depends on payment structure on that and who it is that you're paying and what that looks like. So there's you'd probably do very well to hire a corporate lawyer who can help you set something up that would operate within our rules and the law.
Okay. And then once I go through an attorney to set that up, then once I convert my business under an LLC, then I'm assuming I need to report that with TREC, and then I guess the LLC name would be how I would be found under the Texas Real Estate Commission, or no?
Yeah.
Or would I still be, I guess, would it still be Nicole Ekman, or would it be like Nicole Ekman Property Group in terms of how I would be looked at under TREC, I guess?
I think it would be both, and it would depend on your license.
Okay.
Scott, do you have anything on that? I think your experience on this is much greater than my own.
Yeah, let me try to simplify just a little bit and tell me if I'm wrong, because I'm certainly not an attorney and don't play one on Tuesday morning. An LLC or corporation, they're an entity, okay? And just like we cannot pay an individual that does not have a real estate license, we cannot pay an entity that does not have a real estate license. So if you set up the entity, it would need to have a corporate broker's license as an LLC in order for the broker to pay. Chelsea, does that make sense?
No, that's exactly right.
Okay, that makes sense.
Could I ask a question, please?
Yes.
I'm the one that sent in that question about an LLC. Excuse me. And in 2018, I submitted my paperwork. I established an LLC through the state. I obtained all the paperwork that TREC is asked for. I went out and purchased errors and omission insurance, just like a traditional brokerage. And I established it because, from what I understood from TREC, was that as an LLC, that is, of course, that has been issued a license by TREC, right? That you could hire agents under that LLC as long as you have a broker of record. And as an agent with experience, you can establish an LLC, hire your agent, issue disbursement authorizations, as long as the LLC is the one that gets paid. And a lot of questions have come up out here in the field by other competing agents, competing brokers stating that's illegal. You can't do that. But going by TREC guidelines, having all the proper errors and omission, sponsored broker, from what I understood from TREC is that you're able to hire agents, you're able to discuss or negotiate commissions with those agents. You're able to get paid through the LLC, and then you can pay your agents from that. Please correct me if I'm wrong, because that's what I understood, and that's how I established it according to the TREC guidelines in 2018.
Chelsea, I think I understood the question. Yes, we run all of our brokerage through an LLC, through a corporate license. That is, the corporate license is licensed with TREC, Leading Edge Real Estate Inc., doing business as Century 21 The Edge, with me as a designated broker. Now, if you own less than 10% of that LLC, then you're subject to E&O insurance. So most corporations, most large brokerages will operate under a corporate license. So yes, you can do that if you do everything through TREC. It is possible. Chelsea?
Yeah, that's right. I'm trying to figure out where the challenge is on that, and I'm wondering if it's something related to the designated broker. What's the association with the designated broker, Michael? Are you the designated broker?
No, ma'am. I'm the owner of the LLC.
Okay.
I established it. I do have a designated broker that I ultimately have to answer to on any questions that appear. All payments are going through the LLC and then disbursed to the agents that earned it. So it's just a question out here in the field, right? Everybody's saying it's illegal, you're going to get reported to TREC. And I said, I have all the paperwork, I have all the licenses from TREC, the LLC's licensed, I'm licensed and have been for quite a long time. So I just, it's good and comforting to hear from someone at the top.
Sure. And Michael, if we want to talk more specifically about your issue, Christine, if you wouldn't mind flipping through to the last
Sure.
slide, that will include one more. There you go. Scott's email and my email. If you want to shoot it to me, what I would do is connect you to our enforcement division to just be able to talk through your specific facts so that your level of confidence can be as high as it needs to when you're receiving that challenge from the field.
And we always like to remind the public when they call in, because we've gotten these kinds of questions before. Like Chelsea had said before, it might actually be good to also confirm, if you're figuring out how to make payments it's best to usually ask an attorney, not try to get legal advice from TREC as far as how your business structure should work.
Right. We can't be your lawyer, but we can help you navigate our rules.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Chelsea, if I can, let me add something while we're talking about this. We talked about it yesterday. I don't know how many brokers we have on the phone or, listening in, but it is vital that you have some type of succession plan. We've had two situations that I'm familiar with in the last 3 months come up where something's happened to the broker and there's been no succession plan for someone to take over. And one of them involved a property manager that had 250 properties, and he passed away and there was nothing in place to continue his business, sell his business, or do anything. So if you have the LLC or just a regular broker and you operate a business, the new broker responsibility course has a succession chapter in it. So y'all really look at that. It will certainly save a lot of heartache with your business.
Absolutely. And it looks like Nicole has a question.
Just real quick, I'm trying to kind of think through all this. So if the LLC is under a brokerage firm, so like I hang my license with eXp Realty. So as long as I report to them that I'm now operating under the LLC name, would that cover the part about the business entity needing to be licensed or no?
No, the actual entity would need to have a license, not just you as the owner of the LLC.
Okay. Okay. I'm still kind of confused, but I have an attorney that I'm going to be working with on it. So I guess I'll talk to him. And if I have additional questions, I'll contact you guys.
Absolutely. And feel free to contact me. What I will do is point you towards one of our lawyers. I remembered and noticed, we do have the general.counsel@trec.texas.gov email address on there as well. Anything of a legal nature, feel free to pass that direction as well. We want you to feel confident in it, but this is a hard area. So I understand. Looks like Lynn.
Yeah, and it's just kind of something I've been thinking about, just because I can, as I continue to grow, I do want to protect, protect myself, you never know. And I also want, for tax purposes, I wanted to set something like that up. So anyway, that's the reason I've been kind of thinking about it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Lynn, we have a question from Lynn.
Yeah, Scott, since you mentioned the new broker responsibility course, the last time I took it, last year, I guess it was, more than half the course was about property management. We don't do property management in my brokerage. And it just felt like such a waste of my time to have to be going through using so much time on that subject. Is there some way that this course can be focused toward what we actually do in our brokerage?
Great question. You first, Scott.
The broker responsibility course, along with Legal 1, Legal 2, is promulgated, okay? It is written and adopted by the commission. Unfortunately, we've got to cover everything that we can possibly cover. I saw the new broker responsibility course yesterday, and I know there's some property management. I don't know if there was as much as last time, but yeah, we have to cover it for all the brokers.
Well, both of those courses, like you said, had that, and it was like, my goodness, when am I going to get to stop reading about property management? To have the two courses, both of them have so much about it when I don't even do it. It just seemed like such a waste of my time.
Scott, can I ask you a question? Is property management the #1 complaint that we get? Issues we see?
Yeah, property management is one of the highest ones, especially when you're property management and trust accounts together. It's definitely one of the highest ones. And a lot of it, I'm looking at the outline and it is in there, but anyway, I'm wondering if we had just spent more time on it because of questions, but it is promulgated, so it is going to cover that, because there's a lot of complaints with property management, and it's one of the the largest fund that we've ever paid out of recovery fund had to do with property management. And if you watch the recovery fund payments, a lot of those are property management, so it is a risk to the public, and that's probably why it's covered so.
There was some way we could certify that we don't do it and be.
That's funny you brought that up. I'm also licensed in New Mexico, and I've got to sign a separate affidavit stating I will or will not do property management. And if you do property management, you're subject to another 12 hours of education.
Well, let's do it that way in Texas and get those of us that don't.
No. We don't want to do anything like New Mexico.
Well, we can do that part if it'll get us out of some of these hours wasted. Thank you.
I don't have the compare. I don't have the old document to be able to compare to the new one. But I can guarantee you that it will not be half of the time. I do think it's an area that needs covering for those who practice property management, but duly noted that it's, I understand where you're coming from, but I'm looking through it right now, and it looks to be, we have a chapter on property management and trust accounts. It's chapter 4, and there are a total of 8 chapters. So it should be about 1/8 of the time.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions pending just yet. We have about 10 minutes more of time.
Christine, I did want to mention
Sure.
Commissioner Leonard provided a good directive, which is to tell folks how they can see the changes to the forms and any changes to rule. And that is that they will be prominently placed on our website when they are available. And then of course we also send out an email to all, do we send it to all license holders or all those who have asked to be sent?
All those that have asked. So we do it a couple of different ways. I did share in the chat box after Commissioner Leonard made that request to the link on the website, our rules page on our website that has all of the recently adopted and proposed rules, as well as the general counsel contact information. So that page is where you go to look up all of that information and to see the rules as they're pending. We also have a communications tool on our website where you can sign up for communications from the agency and select the topics you want to hear about. So I would suggest you do that. You can, I'll share a link in the chat box for that as well. And you can manage that and then also read the newsletter. The newsletter does go out to every single one of our license holders. So if you choose not to manage it that way and you just want to get the newsletter once a month, that will come to you, and our information about rules and things like that are there, but it does open up the risk of you not being able to provide public comment if the newsletter doesn't jive with the public comment period. So okay, I'm not seeing any other comments just yet.
I want to know if anyone has strong feelings on our continued processing of physical checks through the mail. You know, we talked about that as one of our initiatives, is to kind of examine that and to reduce what we process manually through the mail and to increase the financial processing that we do online. Who has any strong opinions on that one way or the other? This is a particular interest to me after our mail incident. You know, I think it now might be a good opportunity to reduce the checks that.
So you're saying they wouldn't have gotten shredded if it would have been digital.
It had been done online. That's right.
Let's get rid of checks, Kim says. Okay. I don't. Any other feedback?
It sure is a pleasure to be with you today. We don't want to keep you any longer than you'd like to be here. You have our information, so you know how to get in touch with us.
I do want to say, as a follow-up, some housekeeping stuff as we wind down, in case anyone's prepping any thoughts or questions. This session is being recorded, and we will share it again on our website as well as on all of our social media outlets. We thank the SABOR Association for having us today. That was really great to work with y'all. Scott and Chelsea, do you guys have any closing remarks?
Only just gratitude for y'all allowing us the time. I really want to be engaged with our local boards so that we now know how best to be supportive and service-minded. Each time we do this, I learn a great deal just by the questions being asked. I mean, if we need to update an article on how best to set up an LLC, we'll get it done just to best equip you. So I really appreciate SABOR for allowing us this opportunity and for hosting us today. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
And just as an FYI, Chelsea is not, well, she is literally sitting in the middle of a construction zone. I don't know if anyone else can hear the drilling behind you.
I apologize. Yes, there's about 3 buildings going up all around us.
Yes, TREC is in the middle of the capital reconstruction zone. So it's quite fascinating to watch, but sometimes bless you for sitting there and listening to it.
Just real quick, I just want to, say the same thing Chelsea did. We want to hear from you. You have our emails. You can find my phone number. You can text me. It's about the relationship. TREC is a wonderful agency. We have incredible staff, but we need to know what we do right. We need to know what we do wrong. If you have a question, throw it at us. We will certainly answer it. And I think Chelsea said something early that I just want to end with. It's important for us to know what our shareholders think. And I'm talking about the title industry, the realtors, the builders, everything. And we might not always agree, but we can disagree without being disagreeable. So, let us know what we can do. It's all about the relationship. We're here to get ideas from you to make our agency and our industry the best possible. So feel free to reach out to us if you didn't want to chat your question or ask your question, email it to us. We will certainly handle it. And I want to thank y'all for taking the time out of your busy day. I know this is the hottest market we've had in a long, long time. And I want to thank you for your time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Tim says thanks so much for our time. We've been getting better for some time, so keep it up. So that's great feedback. Thanks so much, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
Okay, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up today. Thank you again for taking your time out of your day to join us. And thanks again to Commissioner Leonard and Sabor for having us and joining us. And we will see you guys again soon, hopefully next time in person. Thanks so much, everyone.